Call the meeting to order. Sorry about that. Motion to resume the public session. Motion, please. Ms. Coffey and Ms. Richards. All in favor? Vote is unanimous. We are in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to GC private works. Got it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity for us to be here. I'm Ken Hamill, I'm the high school principal, and I'm here with Coach Leonard, who is the girls varsity basketball coach. And tonight we are here to honor Tara Eccles. When I think of what being a Spartan is all about, I think of Tara Eccles. She's worked hard throughout her life and overcome some serious hurdles along the way. She's done this with class, toughness, and an unmatched resiliency. Having her on the news opening day was the perfect way to start the year with the perfect student representing Gates Chi-Li. She fully understands what it takes to set goals, create a plan, and work harder than anyone to achieve her dreams while still helping others along the way. Tara brings the Spartan way to life and is a born leader who deserves all the accolades she has coming, although they're never the purpose for her efforts. I'm proud and honored to serve Tara as principal and hope others follow the path that she has blazed. Thank you, Tara.
Hi, I'm Rachel Leonard. I'm the girls basketball coach. I've had the privilege of coaching Tara for the last 6 years. Her and I started this journey together when she was 11. I have seen Tara grow and mature into a strong and independent woman. Through adversity, Tara's been able to not only accept what has happened, but adapt and change to maximize the potential of an experience. Just a perfect example, Tara tore her ACL as a freshman. And instead of talking about what this meant or what it didn't mean for her, we were having more conversations about, so now how do we pivot and turn? And Tara's like, well, I've always wanted to shoot 3-pointers. And I said, this was the perfect time to do it. And she not only came back and averaged a double-double from the year prior, but she averaged 17 points and 12 rebounds, and was second team AGR, first team All-County, and was a serious candidate for Player of the Year. But it's not just Tara on the basketball court that I'm super proud of. I have seen her with grace handle herself through different situations. I'm always in awe of how she can take time to think through a situation. She's never rushed before she decides what to do and what the right thing to do is, which is always being true to who she is and putting her team first. I could not be prouder of her. I have thought that she has done such a great job. I know that her future is extraordinarily bright. And I know that at home, she learned so many beautiful, strong lessons from her mom, Juanita. I could not be more blessed to have coached Tara for these 6 years. And like Mr. Hamill said, I think that she, could rule the world one day and do whatever she wants. So thank you, T.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Tara.
Congratulations.
Well deserved.
Thank you very much. Agenda changes, Superintendent? Personnel changes, thank you. Moving on to board president comments. We had the opportunity to tour Neil Armstrong and Walt Disney today to see the main entrance improvements and the public flow changes in each of the buildings for security. The buildings look great and the improvements are fantastic. Thank you very much for the opportunity to see them. I also had the opportunity to attend with Mr. Moscato, one of the capital improvement public sessions. I wanted to say that it was great to see that the public was engaged. They were asking questions about scope and cost. We want to encourage the public to continue to engage as we move the capital improvement project forward. Thank you very much. Moving on to points of interest. Dr. Richards?
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to acknowledge the middle school staff. They had sixth grade open house maybe about a week ago, and it was wonderful. It was awesome. Nice crowd, engaged parents, staff, had things in the atrium, the beautiful atrium for parents and participants to partake in, so that was very well done. Then I just kind of walked over to the varsity volleyball game. They were playing Brockport, and even though it wasn't a win, they were putting their heart and soul in it. So it was good to see everyone trying to get back into those activities.
I had the opportunity last week to go to 2 boys modified volleyball games, both of them home, with great effort done by both teams. Part of the marching band performance on the Friday night football game, and a little bit at the end of the football game, which was an exciting game to see. That's good stuff going on here.
Thank you and good evening. I just wanted to share I had the opportunity to go to meet the teacher night at Powell Road Elementary School, and it was clear how hard the staff put time in to organize a safe and friendly environment where we could meet the teachers and come together. And also, we attended the Powell Road School Family Association tailgating party in the parking lot before the varsity football game, where we enjoyed cider and donuts and had a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you. I also was able to attend the football game on Friday night. It was nice just to see the stands full. Kids were loud. Teams pretty proud. You know? And it was also nice to see the marching band that helped in the field. So it was a very good experience. I mean, to see the stands full, much than anything else, as well as the wrapping around the fence. So it was a very good event. Thank you.
So in the past couple weeks, I had the opportunity to also go to one of the curriculum nights at one of the elementary schools. I went to Brassers, which was also very well organized, very well attended. It was a positive experience being to talk to everybody there. I also have been able to attend a couple of the modified boys soccer games, including their game in the stadium, which was a very exciting time for them. And I was able to go see the girls' varsity senior night for soccer and get to experience watching some of the older kids play, which was nice.
Any other points of interest? Okay, thank you very much. Reported meetings.
Information exchange, our last meeting was 2 weeks ago. They had presentation from the Finger Lakes Youth Apprentice Program. This is a program that works with juniors and seniors in high school to get them apprentice and unpaid apprentice internship with local manufacturing companies. Win-win, because there's a huge number of jobs need to be filled in manufacturing, and also gets kids some experience in the field, and if they're looking not to go on a college career path, but into ready to work for. They do some exciting things with that. On match day, they have the students interview with the companies they're interested in, and companies match what students they're interested in. And they do a big announcement, kind of like a signing day type thing, and they play lots of music, and they make it really exciting for the kids to bring out positive attention to it.
Thank you. We had our first labor relations meeting for the North County School Board Association. We had a presentation on data breach and response. I think it was very well done. We're fortunate that we're having throughout basically all industries these types of things. And it was very interesting as to who had to report what when. And it's not always a school district when it happens, but also a good discussion about our third-party vendors and their responsibilities and everything else. I also got a chance to attend the Monroe County Law Conference on Saturday. We had 3 presentations, one on student speech off campus, in particular with social media. One presentation dealt with recent updates in the law, things that have come down from different branches. And I'll get the material for that, and I think I'll bring it in, maybe we can put it someplace in the district office, if somebody wants to look at it. There's a lot of handouts or anything else. Well, last thing is this Saturday is Area 2 discussion resolution. Mike, Mr. Bailey is our voting delegate, but we'll both be at this presentation. So we will ask them, hopefully we'll get some input from the board. There's a couple that I'd like to bring to your attention. One is number 8, number 9, and they both talk about changing the open meeting laws, basically to allow us to have meetings remotely and not tell anybody where they are. I understand the pressure some boards have been under, but to me, that's the opposite of what democracy is all about. You know, we're not a closed society, not a closed group, so I'm somewhat opposed to that. It's interesting to see what happens in Area 2, you know, their input. Those are number 8 and 9, to get a chance to look at them. Excuse me. A couple on immunizations. One of them wants all teachers responsible for being held to the same standard as students for immunization. You know, so I guess it could be some adults who never got the measles shot or something. But that one there probably is not going to go very far either. And a couple on dealing with green environments. I don't think we need a law for school districts to basically look towards finding a way to do things green in terms of construction project as well as current. So those are number 14, 15. So we'll report back after the Area 2 meeting, and then we can have a discussion if the board feels as such. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moscato. I'd like to point out that I think we should, after Area 2 meeting, maybe have an agenda item, just kind of go over how the meeting went and share our feedback with both Mr. Moscato and Mr. Bailey on how they're going to vote at the state meeting. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to visitor comments. Gates Chataway Central School District Board of Education invites public comment at this time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. We ask that individuals state their name and address prior to comments and utilize the podium microphone to address the board. Although the board will not respond directly to individual comments at this time, items brought to the attention of the board may be taken under consideration for future response or action. In order to comply with the laws related to confidentiality, we ask that the issues related to specific school district personnel or students be brought to the attention of the superintendent of schools privately. The board reserves the right to terminate the speaker's comments if his or her comments are in excess of 3 minutes, are repetitive, or are not appropriate for discussion in a board open public forum. Charles Johnson.
Thank you. You're welcome.
How you doing? Mr. Bailey, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
First thing, I agree with him about making this more public, not closing it to us little people. My main purpose for them here is, one, to figure out what you guys do, and second, to ask about the mask mandate. I know you guys are just doing your job, following what the person at the top is saying to do. But if you're doing your job, you need to think about the health of the kids. I don't know if you are aware of a gentleman named Marty Macri from Johns Hopkins University.
he talks about kids wearing masks, how it's not good, how just breathing in your carbon dioxide as you're breathing out is not healthy for the kids to breathe in as they're trying to learn. Their brains are expanding, and this is the time period that they shouldn't be wearing a mask. There's scientific studies saying kids do not get sick like adults do, let alone if you're 65 or older. They get sick more so than what, let's say, the younger generation. So all in all, they shouldn't be wearing masks. Should take that next step to tell the governor that, listen, it's not healthy for the kids, the students. We put you guys in charge of taking care of our kids. It's really hard for me sending my kid to school wearing a mask, knowing that he's breathing in his carbon dioxide. Last year, the last week of school, when I found out that he had to wear a mask outside for recess, that kind of set me off, but that was the last week of school. Wasn't going to get into it, but I didn't feel that was right. The outside, you got the breeze. Long story short, kids shouldn't be wearing masks, and I hope you guys take that into advice, look into it. Again, Marty Macri, this is his field, health. Your guys' field is taking care of our students and looking out for the best interest for them to become successful. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sure. Thank you for your comments. Moving on to capital improvement updates.
Dr. Ball and I wanted to update the board. We held 3 public forums about our Building Brighter Futures capital planning. This was the agenda we shared with them. We're going to give you a brief overview of what we shared with our community at our 3 sessions for those of you that weren't able to make it. And again, introducing the people that are there, Dr. Ball, myself. We have members from SEI and campus construction here.
I am Vic Tomaselli, Senior Principal with SEI Design Group.
Joe Pilato, Project Manager with Campus Construction Management.
And so again, we started getting into different aspects of it, and Mitch and I will go through it quickly with you so you can see what we shared with the public.
Yeah, so just thinking a little bit about what we shared, and again, we're going to go through this very quickly, not the full presentation that we did with the public. And then at the end, we're going to review some of the feedback that we received and what the next steps are. So just from a conceptual perspective, this is what a project looks like. In the beginning, we go through the planning phase where we talk with various constituencies within the district and talk a little bit about what our vision is for the future. And then we go into the design phase. This happens after a public referendum, and we get into conceptual design. So in the early planning phase, we don't get into the real details of what every space is going to look like, where you're going to put different features. You're more talking conceptually. And then once you get through that planning phase in the beginning and you get to the vote, and hopefully you get an approval from the public, then you start that conceptual development and schematic design, where you get into the details, and that's when really your architect and construction manager are on board fully and start doing a bulk of the work that you contracted them to do. And then from there, once they've done that, we have to submit that to State Ed, New York State Education Department. And that process of submitting it to State Ed and getting it through State Ed takes about up to a year, I should say. And so that's a very long period. And then from there, we go out to bid, and we bid out the 4 prime contracts. And then once those are bid out, then we have the opportunity to start building. And that's that last section where we start building. And so again, at the end of this, we'll review a timeline that has more detail. This is just the 1,000-foot view. So then we reviewed the history of our projects. We toured some of those spaces today. So we went into far more detail with the public. I know that the board has been fully updated on what those updates have been. From there, we talked about our priorities going into a future project. We talked about the building condition surveys, how under the regulations, every 5 years, we have to do a building condition survey. And what that building condition survey does is we look at everything from roofs to floors to all kinds of space needs. So we look at the whole of our facilities and we identify things within those facilities that need attention. And we assign a level of priority to those things depending on what their condition is. So we included that as part of the conversation. And then another priority for us was prudent and sound financial planning. I know we've talked about this as both the Facility Finance and Audit Committee and at the board level, but that really we're looking to save up for projects so that we have little to no tax impact. That's a major goal for us moving into the future. And then we regularly plan for capital improvements so that we're taking care of the spaces that support our staff and students. Okay, then we talked a little bit about the actual planning process. I know I reviewed this in the springtime, but briefly, again, we met with the principals, we met with the architects, we looked at that full scope list when the project was around $100 million and it was pared down to 68. So we talked about what were those things that were remaining on the list that the principals helped us identify that maybe still needed attention, and then what were some other things that the principals still needed or wanted within their buildings. So we compiled all that information. And then we started conducting weekly meetings with SEI and campus to talk about what the future project could potentially look like. From there, we also included some priority items from that building condition survey that was completed this year with Young and Wright Architectural Firm. And we identified $4 million of work that is a priority now and within the next 5 years, out of $104 million that were on that list. Now remember, that list may have some things that say, this is an item you're going to need to address in 20 years. So, our roofs last a very long time, up to, 30 plus years. So some of those things on that list may not need to be addressed right now. We're talking about things that need to be addressed within our buildings right now, and we identified approximately $4 million of cost. And really, one other piece on that is that the New York State Education Department, the reason why they require the BCS is because they want us to take care of our facilities so that they don't fail. And then we're in big trouble and are trying to reach out to the state for an emergency project to address something that they believe districts and communities should take care of on a regular and ongoing basis. So from there, we also evaluated programmatic impacts. We evaluated UPK and district office options. During the last project, we did lose a little bit of UPK space, and we sent more kids over to our community partner at Imaginations. So one of the things that we're looking to do is bring up to 4 UPK classes back to Gates Shiloh, potentially in the administrative building. And we're looking at up to 4 of those, which would bring 72 students back into the district because there's 18 kids per class. And then we also generated an initial project scope list using building level feedback, and then we evaluated financial impacts. So early scope discussions.
So early scope discussions, we talked about, as we shared with you previously, about bringing UPK back, putting 4 classrooms in the admin building, remembering that we could get 0 aid on the admin building because there are no students there. By building classrooms in there, it will generate state aid or building aid for that. Also, something we talked about in the build up to this current project was we cut out the concession stand. The idea being to add the concession stand at the end of the building, ironically in my office, current office, and then having restrooms there open to the public that would be available. On top of that, with UPK, you do have to have a playground, so we would add a playground right there at the base of the track and just outside the doors there. This solves several problems for us. What it also allows us to do is we will maintain our special ed offices will stay there as well as our registrar. And then the rest of the admin would move over, as we'll be talking about in a second, to the high school. And we would address priority initiatives. As we know, we had the basement that flooded There are some roofing issues and other things that would be addressed in the building from the building condition survey here as we get this building ready to be a UPK center for our youngest learners. So at the high school, we would renovate our tech classrooms. Our tech classrooms were cut as part of the previous project, saving for this one, and they need a lot of loving. They need to be updated so that our kids are able to utilize them in a manner that allows them to go out into the world of work or to college with the advantage of having top tech in there. We would relocate our administrative offices to what was the old West Side Academy there as well. Again, knowing that with the building usage that we've looked at, they fit there and it allows us to utilize a part of there as well. And then generating the state aid or building aid again back in the admin building. And we'll continue to address anything from our building condition survey, primarily roofs at the high school as well. At the middle school, we will be flip-flopping where tech and music are and redoing all those rooms. Our music rooms have been around a while. Same with our tech, and it's time to take care of them and bring them up to speed, as well as add a multi-purpose field. In talking with our community partners, we would add a softball field at one end, baseball field at the other, and down the middle or the outfields would be soccer / field hockey / lacrosse fields. That would be allow us to offer to our community partners as well as our kids year-round use. It would be lit, so it would allow for games all day. And our youth baseball, youth soccer, youth lacrosse, all that youth football would be able to have access to yet another field that's accessible year-round, which is neat. And so on the weekends, they could host tons of games for our community as well as for our students, as well as addressing building condition survey things. Now at Florence Brasser is the last one remaining that we have not updated their central office location and making it secure. Tonight you got to tour both Neil Armstrong and Disney where you got to see what that change looks like. We will be bringing that as well to Florence Brasser to finish out our elementary buildings. And we all know that our parking and bus loop and pickup drop-off situation at Florence Brasser needs a lot of attention. And the plan for this is to expand it and make sure that it is allowing more cars to be off the street so we are good neighbors with our community that's there, and it's to make it much safer for our learners over there and their families. And again, addressing building condition survey needs there.
So that's the entirety of the work that we're currently looking at or discussing as a community. And the next thing that we started talking about was the financial consideration. So our building aid ratio is about 81%. So what does that mean? On most construction, we get 81 cents back on the dollar from the New York State Education Department. The difference between that 81% and the 100% of the cost, the district has to shoulder that burden. And so the building aid ratio for Gates Child is fairly high. That's a good building aid ratio. And so that means that we're able to get a good amount of work done at a lower cost. So the next thing is maximum cost allowance and aidability of project. This is a big concept. It's a little complex, but every building has a maximum cost allowance. So what does that mean? The state looks at all the instructional spaces in the building, and then they say each one of those rooms has a certain value or aidability. And so when looking at a building, you have a certain maximum cost allowance, how much project work you can do and have it still be aidable. Okay, so when we talk about this project, which we talked about with the public, certain buildings we're currently doing work in. And so every 5 years, that maximum cost allowance resets. And so some of the buildings that we have right now where we have construction ongoing, if we start work soon, then we won't get aid necessarily on that work because those building aid units or that maximum cost allowance resets every 5 years. So the other thing that we look to do is we utilize capital reserves and fund balance. We look at our existing debt service. Our debt service is our mortgage payments. When we do capital work, we borrow money, and we have a principal and interest payment. And so we look at how much debt service we have, and when some of that debt service is going to drop off, that allows us to fill new debt service into our schedule. So it's as if you paid off your mortgage, and now you might buy something else to fill in that money that you were spending every month. You might say, okay, now I want to buy this and borrow some money to do that. Same concept. And then we look at our credit rating. That's very important when thinking about borrowing or issuing debt service. And then we're also looking again to have little to no tax impact. So we want to save up so that on that difference between what we get back from the state and what we have to pay, we can use that savings to offset that cost so that there's no increase in taxes. So this is the schedule with a little more detail. We've been through the planning and research phase. We've now been through some public input. Then we're going to talk about the board authorizing the planning effort, which I'll talk about again in a few minutes. Public vote, we're hoping for a February 2nd, 2022. And then we're going to get into those next steps, which include the design, the New York State Education Department review, which can take up to a year, the bidding of the project and awarding, and then eventually construction in spring of 23, hopefully going through the summer of 2025. So the community forum varied. We had multiple times and multiple locations. When school was in session, it was over at the administrative building. We had a 12:30 session, and then we had 2 sessions here at 4:30 and 6:30. We had a total of 20 attendees. There wasn't a ton of community members, but it was attended, and we did have some input. So some of that input included safety and security for UPK classrooms. We indicated that the same level of security in that building that exists now would exist into the future, including having a receptionist at the front desk. We talked about, somebody brought up converting open classrooms to closed classrooms. So if you think about Walt Disney and Neil Armstrong, they have those open classroom designs. We did indicate that that's something that the district can look at in the future, but the reality is that we're doing work there, and that maximum cost allowance is not reset yet for those buildings. So it's not something that we would look to address now if the community decided that they wanted to address those things. We talked about air conditioning buildings. That is something to consider, but it is very, very cost prohibitive. And probably isn't something that we'll endeavor upon right now. That would be a whole separate project that would cost an incredible amount of money, and it takes a lot to upkeep those systems and to pay for them on a regular and ongoing basis. So we have to build money into our budget to air condition buildings long term. We talked about the percentage of capital reserves being used, indicating that we have about $15 million in reserves right now, and we would look to use that for this future project, but then continue to save for the future. And then we talked about the projected growth, indicating that our cohorts are fairly stable moving out into the future, maybe even a slight uptick based on our data. So our targeted next steps would start immediately. Those would include the seeker and SHPO process. Real briefly, what those are is one's an Environmental Quality Review Act is the seeker process. And essentially what that is we have to look at what's the impact of the project on the environment in the area. And then SHPO, which is the historical review, we have to look at if there's any impact on potentially historical elements of where we're doing construction. So that process would have to start relatively soon. And then again, taking community feedback and moving forward, now we start to review and really refine designs so that we can prepare for a Board of Ed resolution to put out to the community, and then we would start public information. Eventually, hopefully on January 25th, we would need to have a public meeting to communicate all of this. That's part of the regulations, and then we would hope to put it out to the community for vote in 2022, February 2nd, 2022. So do you have any comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Coffey.
The section where it's talking about public information, does that include things like presentations of us, or what does that look like?
So it will likely include some presentations to the community, and it will also include mailings. Potentially, we haven't quite figured out what the plan is, but definitely media type information. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a structural question, just so you said district office,
Hold it.
just a structural question, so district officers will be moved to West Side Academy.
Yep.
Give me a little bit more information, where was that, where is that location?
So BOCES had a program right here called West Side Academy. They have since vacated and they're in another location now, housing that program. And so we do have our construction management firm in this area. We have a couple of classrooms. SEI Design Group, in conjunction with Mr. Hamill, did a review of all high school spaces and figured out that those classrooms can be consolidated to other areas within the building. They did a full analysis. And so those classrooms that would, the few classrooms that are still in this area would move into the building, and we would move into this corner space, which this is the new Performing Arts Center right here. This doesn't look like this anymore. And so this is now the parking lot next to that area.
Perfect, thank
Oh,
you,
sorry, it's actually down a little bit more too. It's this whole area.
thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Moving on to business office presentation.
Okay, thank you for having us tonight. Mrs. Lamb and Mrs. Sanford, do you want to come up to the podium with me? So, we are here to share a business and finance report. So I want to thank you for having us here tonight. I have with me Mrs. Sanford, our district treasurer, and Mrs. Anna Lamb. She's both our payroll and benefits supervisor and our budget analyst. So they'll be talking a little bit about some things in a couple of minutes. So before I start, I just would like to share that we appreciate you having us here, and that the business and finance department is not something that you usually hear about. We kind of work in the background doing a whole bunch of technical type work to help the district run on a day-to-day basis. So this is the business and finance section of the org chart. Tonight, we're just going to be talking about that area, the district treasurer and payroll and benefits and budget side of things. So within our department, this is the whole department. Mrs. Lamb supervises Cindy Borelli, the payroll clerk, and Lisa Johnson, the benefits specialist. Whereas Mrs. Sanford manages accounts payable, Deb Soping, purchasing, Cheryl Alonso, claims auditing, Cindy Jones, and then Jolena Corso over here, who's the deputy treasurer / tax collector. She is shared between Mrs. Lamb and Mrs. Sanford. Okay, and then there's Mrs. Byer. She's our administrative assistant. So I just want to mention real quickly a couple of our long-standing employees, Cheryl Alonso and Cindy Borelli. They have been with the district for a very long time, and so I just wanted to highlight them and highlight their commitment to the district. They do a great job day in and day out, and so kudos to them. So moving on to finance. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to briefly outline what we do, and then we're going to highlight a couple of things that we've been working on over the last year, a couple of the projects that we've been focused on. We're all new to these positions within the last year and a half, or a little over a year and a half. So from a finance perspective, all the accounting, the accounts receivable, that's money we're receiving. Accounts payable, those are vendors and service providers that we pay. Auditing, there's a whole lot that goes into auditing, whether it's state audits, federal audits. That falls under our department. Most of them, not all of them, one's generally related to business and finance. Investments and banking, we'll talk about that a little bit. Grants management, we do a lot with grants management. Purchasing, doing all the purchasing for the district. Reporting, that's a big piece, and then taxes, tax collection. So now I'm gonna turn it over to Mrs. Sanford, and she's gonna highlight some of the projects that we've been working on in the department.
Sure, I got it.
Sorry. Okay, hi everyone. So the first thing that we've been highlighting here for COVID funding, there's so much different funding going on now that districts are able to receive. The very first round was the ESSER year funding, which was a rigorous application. There was some dispute about what non-pubs would get. We were able to get those out to our non-publics that requested funds and were eligible to, and that first round has been completed. The FEMA reimbursement. The FEMA reimbursement came out early post-COVID. And basically they said, hey, anything that your district spent in supplies and wages, we're gonna reimburse you for. So the district has been tracking those expenses, coming up with anything that we can get reimbursed for, and it's a very rigorous process. We're looking for everything from assurances, the data collection, right down to canceled checks for every single expenditure. So we are collecting that, and unfortunately, a lot of area school districts have dropped out of this race and decided not to pursue the FEMA reimbursement. So they're encouraging those that are still in it, like we are, to claim everything that we can. So we are going to definitely pursue that and keep going. So the next round of funding that came out was the Carissa and art funds. And with those, again, they were extended 3 years, 4 years out, and Dr. Ball worked very hard to figure out what would be the best interest of the district to spend that fund on. Which is also in our special fund now, which is going to fall under more grants management. Efficiency of the district. When I started here, we had 22 bank accounts. It was a very rigorous treasurer's report and bank reconciliation process. So we're down to 8 right now, which makes my life a whole lot easier. And it really demonstrates the business and finance team's commitment to efficiency, to review all of the services under the bank that we were not using. So we were paying for services we weren't using. And we also were able to use automated reconciliations instead of using the time-consuming paper. Highlight this, check that. Is this check outstanding? Is it not? Now we're using our financial system and WinCap to reconcile that, and it's a much smoother process. So by doing these efficiencies, we were able to save the minimum balance requirements and reduce our banking fees. And we are now trying to maximizing our interest earnings by using a local team called 3+1, who help municipalities invest and maximize their interest earnings. In our accounts payable section, I had our accounts payable clerk roll through and say any vendors that we haven't used in the last 3 years, we're going to inactivate them. This forces us to get a new W-9 and verify that that vendor is still a real vendor, and verify their legitimacy. Are they, do they have a tax ID? Is their address correct? And then once we did get those new W-9s, we scanned them right into WinCap instead of having to dig through paper files to try to find the accurate information. And this also eased the 1099 process in that department. Under accounts receivable, there were a lot of aged balances out there, and I was able to work with 2 of the largest school districts in our area to get those cleaned up. Some erroneous billing errors, and some that were just forgotten about. So I, regrouped, got them the data they needed, worked with the Student Support Services Department, who has been absolutely fabulous, and we worked together to just make sure that the information that we are sending out is accurate. So we're not having write-offs in the following fiscal year. There are no errors. And we discovered that, hey, some of this data that we need already exists. They can already run that report, and I have everything they need, and we're avoiding duplicity.
And then our transparency and ESSA reporting. What are these? These are, first transparency is New York State Division of Budget. And ESSA is the federal version of the actual expenditures, where we need to report by building our expenditures to ensure that we are not, that our funding between buildings is equal. We're not putting all our money into the high school, we're not putting all our money into the middle school, et cetera. This was done on paper previously. When I first started, I did find some errors and we decided to refile one of the past reports. And moving forward, we are using Forecast 5, which is a data collection team that's used across states, and most of New York State uses them. And so they take our data download from WinCap, our financial software, and then we are able to use that to put it into these two reporting requirements. The St3 Financial Reporting, that is a New York State data collection that they use to compute our state aid. There's various data that's collected, our student count, 180-day requirements, our schedules for each building, our bus runs, our debt, our grants, our school lunch fund, our capital projects, and our preschool expenses. And we were able to go back 2 years and revise claims where students were miscounted, and we were able to maximize some transportation aid that wasn't previously claimed. And then the last two highlights here, we used WinCap, our financial software, to track our student accounts or extra classroom activity within the buildings. They were doing it on paper and outside spreadsheets. So we can see the balances of any club at any time, and their bank reconciliations are much smoother. School lunch fund, when meeting with the new nutrition manager there, Mrs. Phillips, we discovered that there were some duplicity there. The billing and the cash report and the reimbursement claims were all duplicated between at least 3 people. And we were able to summarize that and get it on one page and use WinCap to track those balances to make their life easier as well.
Okay, so the next area is payroll, benefits, and budgeting. Again, that's Mrs. Anna Lamb. Within that area, we talk about active and retiree health insurance, applications management, budgeting, forecasting and reserve planning, payroll, and workers' compensation.
Hi, everyone. The biggest project that we've had this year is electronic timesheets. So we've had 3 different softwares in place. We've had Kronos Workforce Ready, Kronos Central, and another version of WinCap, an actual paper timesheets as well. So what we've done is we have taken them all, combined them into one software, and now we're all using WinCap Web timesheets. That also feeds in from our other system, WinCap Employee Self-Serve, which allows vacation, sick, EOLs, any of your other excused absences to automatically flow in so that you know that the timesheet is correct or the time card is correct. At this point, we have over 400 employees on that, which I think is pretty great. We started this process back in December, and now we have them all up and running. So we had to review everyone's contract to make sure that the payrolls that are in place have been able to be carried over to timesheets. The efficiency of this is immense. All these are also feeding into payroll. So they go into a pending folder and then automatically become actual payroll transactions. So it allows our payroll, Cindy Borelli, a lot more time to do any of the other things that have come up. There's a lot of reporting that we have to do in our department. There's a lot of ERS, TRS forms that have to be done. And now this is allowing her to make sure that it's done in a timely fashion, which is great. Budget forecasting. Forecast 5 is also used in our department. We are using that for budget data. It's a wonderful tool which allows us to take multiple years and kind of combine them into one report or visual slide so that we can analyze the information. The great thing is you can do a lot of what-ifs. We also use that you can use it for tax rates for, years of the future, which is great. Retiree billing. Well, we have over 600 retirees. It's retirees and spouses. So it is very, very time consuming for our benefits person. She is constantly on the phone with these individuals, which is wonderful. They're a great group of people who love to just kind of tell a story. So it's wonderful to kind of get connected with them. Unfortunately, though, that kind of causes us to kind of get a little backed up. So we actually looked into a third-party vendor, which is we're going to look into outsourcing. So they'll collect all, they'll do all the billing, and then they'll collect all the funds, and then they'll send us a report monthly that we can put into our system so our accounting is correct, which is wonderful. The other thing that we have with retiree billing is that we have cleaned up all of our past due accounts, which is amazing. We're at the point now where, unfortunately, if they haven't paid, we have canceled them, but they do all have insurance. We made sure that each individual has insurance before we cancel them on our end here, which was great. It made me feel a little better when I was talking to their kids. I'm like, I don't want to cancel you, please. So it made me feel better on that end. The other thing that we're working on is doing the direct deposit. We went from 18% to 56% in 7 months, which our goal is to have 100%. So it's just much easier to collect our funds. There's no way we can be behind. If something happens, then at least we know. So it's a great option for everyone to be on. Hear you?
Thank you so much. So a couple other things that we do in the business office, budget education, capital project management, contractual agreements. We help with negotiations assistance, insurance, records management, and request for proposals. A couple quick highlights. We've been working real hard on capital project management. We manage the finances. We collaborate with stakeholders in district whenever there's any questions or considerations. And then we help with general construction oversight. We also talk about the future project planning and long-term capital planning, which we talked about a little bit tonight. Another big project we've been working on is records management. We've trained staff on the new LGS1. So prior to this past year, it was the New York State Department of Archives. They governed through what was called ED1. It transitioned to the LGS1, which covers us and municipalities and other governmental agencies, whereas in the past it was specific to education. So we had to do that transition and do staff training. We're working on cataloging files and creating an efficient system for managing and tagging files. And we've also been digitalizing a lot of files. Another thing over the last year, we've done requests for proposals that hadn't been done in quite a while. Independent auditor, internal auditor, building condition survey, construction management firm, and architectural firm. Those are all RFPs that we did within the last year. We also updated the purchasing manual. It was a 3-month process with much collaboration among stakeholders. It was distributed district-wide and posted online, so as we go into the next budget cycle, staff members know what the rules are for purchasing. And then lastly, budget education. We had budget ambassadors. That's been a wonderful way to connect with community members and kind of dissect what a budget's about. And also the Bit of Budget series, that was new. And we had over 1,400 views, and it was very well received. I think I'm being cut off. Any questions?
I have a question, quick one.
Yes.
So I know you were saying we started out with 22 accounts, went to 8, just kind of things lingering that just need to be cleaned up, or?
Yeah, so just from an efficiency standpoint, to have 22 accounts and to manage 22 banking accounts is very difficult. You're doing a lot of back and forth. That compensating balances piece, that's how much money you have in the bank at any one time. And when you don't have as much money in one bank account, you get more fees. It's kind of like the interest you earn on an account if you have, $100 versus whether you have $10,000 is different. And so that's really what we're dealing with, is trying to be more efficient with the accounts that we do have less transactions so that we can be more efficient. Yes, sir.
A bunch of things. Do we have an idea on how many labor hours it's taken to manage the new grants coming out for COVID? Do we have to clone you?
Yeah, you might want to consider that.
Okay. I just want to point out that it does take a lot of time and effort.
Yes, it does.
Also, is it true that New York State did short us? And so there was a lot of money on the table from the federal grants perspective, but remind people that New York State did short us and we're having to kind of backfill that?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
I can fill you in with the
Sure.
microphone. So number one is, speaking to the grants, Mrs. Sanford has done an incredible job managing these grants. It does take a whole lot of work, and it's in addition to the work that she's regularly doing to track all of these COVID-related expenses and help us look to the future on how we're going to address learning loss and deal with all of the things that are COVID-related. Secondly, when talking about aid, yes, the state indicated a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago, after we had already kept staff on during the early COVID era. So from March to June, we kept paying staff through early COVID. The state announced essentially in early May that schools were not going to reopen. And so we chose as a district not to lay off staff because we knew that if we laid off staff and we came back in September, we were going to lose a whole bunch of bus drivers. And so after we did that, and districts did that across the state, 700-ish districts, the majority of them, probably all of them, kept bus drivers on staff and attendants. And so we did that, we kept them on staff, and we continued paying them because it was the right thing to do. And so then in the fall, the state came back and said, for that period of May to June, when we shut down school, we're not going to give you aid on those expenses. And for us, what that means is approximately a $1.2 million loss in state aid. Sorry, 1.6 million loss in state aid as a result of not being able to claim those expenses as we thought we had while we were doing it. Now, I don't know if we would have changed tack at that point because it's the right thing to do, and we probably would have lost employees if we didn't do it. But still, for them to come back after the fact and say, we're not going to give you that aid was a difficult thing to bear. Is there another question?
Yeah, a couple other things. In keeping track of, is there any special accounting rules that we have to live up to or do to make sure that we track where that grant money, where it comes in and how it goes out, to make sure that it goes to all the right places and doesn't come under scrutiny?
So yes, Mrs. Sanford and I have both been through this before with these types of grants. Without getting into too much detail, the federal government typically gives out grants in difficult times. They did it during the Great Recession period. And so for us, we generally create account codes and we track those expenses within those account codes. And we also disaggregate them in the way that we normally do, and whether it's professional salaries or support staff salaries or contractual expenses or materials and supplies.
Managing age receivables, thank you. If you don't do it, forget stuff, like you said. It's really great to hear that we're being on top of that. Forecast 5, thank you. I'm guessing that you're seeing the benefits, great benefits from it. Appreciate the insight and calling it in. And managing the retiree process, was there a consideration that we're going to be checking with the retirees to maintain or increase their satisfaction level with the services that we provide, and as we outsource, to make sure that their perception of service doesn't go down?
So yes, that is a consideration. It's a topic of conversation that Mrs. Lamb has been directly consulting with that third-party vendor. I will say that she's consulting on behalf of the region because this is a benefit that's provided to us as part of our health insurance consortium, RASH. And so we're not paying anything additional to explore this opportunity. And obviously one of the key factors is our former employees, our retirees, are they being supported at the highest level that we expect here in the district?
Perfect, thank you. I have no other comments or questions. Any other comments, questions? No?
Thank you very much, and thanks again to Mrs. Sanford and Mrs. Lamb. They do a great job.
Moving on to high school administration presentation. You get to use the microphone.
Thank you much. There we are. Superintendent Daly, President Potensky, Vice President Richards, and members of the board, welcome to the high school. We put together a few slides just to kind of cover some of the sort of pregame, the preseason, our opening of the season, and kind of where we are right now. So in preparation for the 2022 school year, obviously a lot of summer planning and building readiness projects took place. I've got to thank our custodial staff and buildings and grounds for doing a wonderful job of getting the building back and ready for a larger volume of kids. So having those kids back in the building where they should be and making it as clean, inviting, and as safe as possible is obviously our goal. The curriculum and assessment piece, we wanted to find out where these kids are. There are obviously some gaps that have grown over the last year and a half. So we want to put in place just some diagnostics to find out where kids are with some of the major concepts, sort of establish a little bit of a benchmark or a starting point, and then figure out where we need to be from there. So what we did learn last year is that we did have to chunk some things down and stick to some of the major concepts and really, provide these kids with some meat and potatoes so that we could get a little deeper to really help their understanding in their absence. And some of that will remain this year, although we will try to, expand on that as we go. So we have some new teacher leadership in place, and Troy's office has done a nice job of putting things together. He and Katie put some meaningful work together this summer, and we're going to see this as we continue to grow over the next couple of years. We're going to be losing some of our key teacher leaders who have been in place for quite a while. So again, this provides us with some new eyes, some new ideas, and it just it allows some of our other leaders to step up and really develop those skills within their departments. So again, it's exciting, but again, we are losing some quality leaders and have lost some quality leaders in the last 2 years. Counseling did a nice job with ninth grade orientation this year. We had a huge turnout. We had 2 sessions. The technology department with Mr. McKinney really helped us out as far as getting our ninth graders those new students their new devices, getting them ready for the year, and even getting lists of kids ready to go so that on that first day we knew exactly who we needed to get computers to, who was having issues, and how we could help them. The changes to the code of conduct and schedule, really taking a look at some of the things that we felt targeted specific demographic groups or genders, and trying to remove that language, make it more appropriate and inviting for all. But even things like kids using their backpacks, getting to class, without having to go to your locker in between every class, we're able to move kids along, which obviously helps us stay safe as well with COVID and everything else. So we avoid the big groups, we get them going, we get them to and from class, and again, most of the information is on those devices. Career Center opening. So some of the feedback we've received over the last few years is that kids wanted more support, especially when those kids come back in January, our first year graduates. They told us that they wanted more support in the college process, the application process, things like that. So we were able to open the Career Center, which was only open before when we had teacher available. So now we have an aide in there that will be providing the access these kids need, providing resources and guidance in Naviance, in the application process, in the scholarship process. So we're really hoping that this is an area where we can grow and continue to develop to really help these kids, especially the kids going to school with that process, but also those other kids where we're gonna have a whole military section. They'll have their own area in there. And then the career piece where we can have presentations and classes come down and either have in-person professional SMEs coming in and talking about the work that they do and what it takes to become where they are, or we can do it virtually within that classroom. So we're very excited about that. And then you kind of got a construction update. We're still waiting on our new music areas. They're unbelievable. I think you guys took the tour tonight. These facilities are second to none. When you pull in this campus, start over there by the track and stadium and work all the way down to our new Performing Arts Center. They're just amazing. We really appreciate your support with that and your work with the community. But again, right now it's we've got a little pinch down by the cafeterias that we'll work through. But again, we're getting it done. It's not perfect. And as soon as we get those new spaces, we actually have the freshmen eating down here in the small gym, similar to last year, except being served down there. So we've got a little travel going on. As soon as those spots or those spaces are open, we'll take those and relocate them to an area down closer to the cafeteria to give those kids a little more time to just sit, socialize, and relax. It's opening day. We were excited, fired up, ready to go. The kids came in, the teachers came in. There was an energy that I don't think I felt. It was almost like a pregame energy, literally, before like a college football game. Those doors opened and those kids got off those buses, and it was incredibly special. But in both sides, we're just excited to see each other. Some of these kids haven't been in our building for a year and a half. And again, some of these kids were this big, a year and a half ago, and all of a sudden they're a foot taller and with a beard or whatever, and you hardly recognize them, but it was certainly great to see them. It's the largest number of people we've had in this building in a year and a half. You realize the volume of kids we do have in the building and what it takes to move them and get them to where they need to be on time. Our big focus was on the social emotional wellness of the kids and the staff. And I'm going to keep mentioning the kids, but we really, and I keep having to kind of pinch myself to remind myself, these staff have to rebuild stamina too. They're going through things. They have kids at home that have gone through things. So this is not a one-sided deal. This is everyone in this building is growing and coming back together, simultaneously. And that social emotional wellness is obviously a key. But just welcoming the students, reestablishing some of the routines, talking about some new expectations with the computers, lockers, the lunch, situation, things like that. And bottom line, just getting to know each other. Getting to know each other, what's making each other tick, how can we help each other the best, and to really get things going back in the shortest amount of time. And then easing into the content workload. We have to chunk some things down and get down to those meat and potatoes, the big things. And I said, don't start, giving these kids tons of homework and writing papers and everything right off the bat. I don't care if you're an AP student or whatever. That's not what we need. We need to grow together and get back into this as a group. And again, I said the staff and students are working together and making that happen. But overall, great energy, a lot of fun. And so now we're back in action here. Some of the things that were on hold or some of our COVID casualties, as we call them, our tech services, right back in. We're figuring out which kids really struggled, or if they had trouble with their devices. We had to make sure that they were working properly. Ninth graders got all new devices along with the newer students. The clubs and activities, they're back for the kids. We talk about what makes our school inviting and what makes our kids tick. The biggest thing in the high school is we've got something for everyone. Whether it's anime club, whether it's the musical, whether it's sports, music, it's all here. And the neat thing is when kids find other kids that have similar interests and they find a connection, they find they're together with someone else with those similar likes and wants. So again, those are back up and running. We're looking really forward to them. They're performing in visual arts. We're back, hearing the kids. watching the kids out in the field, like Mr. Moscato said, seeing those kids do their thing. I mean, see, this Friday is senior night, and there's no game, but they'll be doing their performance twice out on the field so that those seniors can have their moment under the lights too. It's important, and again, it's a lot of work and commitment by both the staff and the students there. Field trips, we had our Crossroads groups today riding down the Erie Canal, singing the song, the whole deal. So it was something very neat. And again, we have some gems and treasures in this area that sometimes go underutilized or even unnoticed. So again, we want to tie that into their learning and into the content curriculum. But again, those field trips provide a really, authentic experience for those kids. Our class leadership, our elections have taken place. We will be handling our first leadership circle coming up. And I'm anxious to talk to our leaders. We've got some big topics that we're going to be talking about and really setting the tone for what being a leader is all about. And then hopefully having that trickle out into their classes as we go on with the year. Homecoming is next week. Looking forward to that. So short week, game on Thursday, football game on Thursday, but we've got games all week in other sports. We've got some activities going on at school and during school, obviously, some of the traditional things. And then, capping it off with the homecoming game Thursday night. And then just all our interscholastic sports and our introduction to esports. It gives kids a purpose. It gives kids a reason to be here. And it certainly allows them to be part of something bigger than just themselves. So there's a lot of education and a lot of lessons that are learned through sports. And this new esports is, it's where things are. Colleges are, having them, and it's pretty much growing across the country. So we're jumping on board. We've got a great situation. It's going to be right down here in the library. It's our little Thunder Dome right there, getting things ready to go and fired up. But again, it's just going to be another neat area for kids who traditionally may not be involved in competitive athletics to be a part of a team, to work toward a common goal, to learn together, to grow together, and get all those, those intangibles that come along with being involved in those kind of activities in just a different setting and context. And then I talked about some of the authentic learning activities with, some more access to co-ops and internships and things like that, back out in the field where our kids can gain that on-the-job training and realistic instruction. So some big thank yous. Our custodial staff did an unbelievable job. The school nutrition staff, it's been great. Janice has been great. Marissa, Sue here, they have done wonders and they've listened. And I really appreciate that. We had an issue early in the year. We were trying to get kids organized, trying to get kids through the lunch line. It wasn't happening. We had to make an immediate change. We opened the other cafeteria. We talked to Janice and Marissa and Sue. We got together. We had to change kind of a choice, part of our choices that we were offering. Still, kids are getting great choices. It's just we had to trim one off to make sure that we could get kids through the lunch line. I mean, 8 out of every 10 kids came through. They wanted a meatball sandwich. Well, if you got one meatball sandwich line, it just wasn't cutting it. So, but they listened. And again, we've got kids now that most of our kids have 20 minutes minimum to sit down, eat their lunch, near their friends, communicate, get on their computers, whatever. District leadership, from all the elementaries, middle school, our cabinet level, have been incredibly supportive coming into this year. We have gaps. This is going to take years for us to recoup and get these kids back to perhaps where they were or where they could have been. So it's going to take a lot. We're up for the challenge, and we appreciate the support that we've had. The construction team has done a good job of keeping us going, and I know that even with all the the challenges of labor and materials and everything else, they've done a good job of trying to stay on schedule, and they know how important those new teaching spaces are, and the pinch that we have with our cafeterias and everything. So again, they're working very hard to make things happen. The high school staff and administration has kept their chins up. We've attacked this year together, and again, we bought in. I mean, Gate Shiloh is a pretty traditional school in a lot of ways. Some might even say stuck in the mud in some things, but we have come so far in the last 2 years, especially when we had to go to COVID right away. We relied on Schoology and making that the hub and really giving us a focus there was huge. And then we've grown, and our people last year, having fully synchronous instruction from day one, we were ahead of most other districts in the county, and we were able to keep that going throughout the year. So, and I'm going to tell you right now, if a situation came up where we had to make a change, and we had to go back to some kind of, outside instruction or remote instruction, we could do it overnight. We are ready. We have our schedules in place. Our teachers' capacity with technology has, grown incredibly, and we'd be ready to go, and our kids would be able to handle it. So, feel very good about that. Two that I kind of failed to write up here, and I apologize. I mentioned technology. It's been huge, and in our technology office, with the support from Mr. McKinney's office, giving us a couple people early to really help those kids get their things going. And some of those changes have helped us to get a working device in every student's hands early so that they weren't missing, they weren't getting behind, and we didn't start from behind the 8 ball. And then Matt Hembold and everyone over at Transportation has been just absolutely incredible. What they're doing and how he's able to handle our requests and last minute things is just unbelievable with the shortage in labor, drivers, things like that. Like I said, it's a very good position for me to be in when I know I can make calls up the district office, over to transportation, to the middle school, to the elementary schools, and I truly feel like everyone's on the same team. And I feel like that's a reflection of your leadership as a board, and I'm hoping that continues because that makes this place a very good place to be. And that's it, pretty much. So a lot in a little time, but we're working through things. And again, we've got our nose to the grindstone right now, and the energy level of our teachers. I'll tell you, after that first week, actually the first Thursday, when we came back and we didn't have our Wednesdays, I think people were already dragging a little bit, just physically, emotionally, and whatever. But they sucked it up. We got through. And again, we're building that stamina that we need to make sure that we can provide those kids, all of our kids, with the best possible education experience out there. So, any questions?
No questions, sir. Oh,
Just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my daughter's heart. She is so happy to be back.
Good. We're happy to have her. It's been a great year. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to head out to the soccer game if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to consensus agenda. Motion to approve the consensus agenda. Motion, please. Mr. Long and Ms. Munson. Questions or comments? All in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Motion to approve consensus items B through M. Motion, please. Dr. Richards? Mr. Long, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Excuse me while I get to item M. Approval of motion to approve the external independent audit and the extra classroom audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, as presented by EFPR Group, CPAs, PLLC. Ms. Kies, Mr. Long, questions or comments? All right, Mr. Moscato?
Thank you. We reviewed this audit fairly extensively at the Finance Audit Committee meeting, and our auditors were there and they ran through some highlights of it. I'll just draw your attention to the fact that the digital version is attached to the agenda, and pages 61 and 62 are an easy summary. Now, if you have nothing else to do, you can read the 63-page report if you like, but basically they came back with a very clean audit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moscato and Dr. Ball. Congratulations, well done.
to Stanford too.
Yes, thank you very much for pointing that out, and we thank her as well. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I didn't vote. All in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Richards, for reminding me. Moving on to superintendent comments.
Well, I want to start off by thanking our teachers and staff and administrators for all the work over the last couple of weeks preparing for open house and parent nights and those that are still upcoming as we create our community back in, showing off our schools that many of them have not seen for a year and a half. And again, echoing Principal Hamill's statement about the great job in transportation that's been done. We've seen some schools hamstrung by their transportation situations. Our department has been very flexible and found different ways to get things done through both Ms. Barato and Dr. Ball working with Mr. Hempel and finding different ways to get subs in as well. We have been able to really not have it affect our kids, so congratulations to all of them. I wanted to update the board on testing as far as the what we're required to do as the state. For students, we've been given permission to randomly test the following number of students at each building. We're required to do up to at least 5% a week starting the week of October 4th. Florence Nebraska, we got 25 students, Walt Disney 22, Paul Road 27, Neil Armstrong 19, middle school has 46, the high school has 58 for a total of 197 out of about 3,700 kids. So we'll be doing that each week randomly around. We are creating a schedule that we'll be sharing out with the community later this week for those that have given us permission to do that. As far as administration, faculty, and staff, we'll begin testing again the week of October 4th. We have about 215 total, or 27% of our staff will need to be tested each week. This will continue to go down. Some are still bringing in their vaccination cards to show, but they will have to be tested each week. And that'll be going on in our buildings. Wanted to update the board on our high school incident and take a moment to address some of the concerns that have come forth in the wake of the incident that happened after school in our high school. I have been asked why by some community members we didn't communicate to families sooner. And I want to be very clear, the district was not and is not hiding anything. There's been an active police investigation underway since we learned about the incident, and we have an obligation to cooperate with law enforcement's investigation. While we hope to be able to share information sooner, the fact is that we cannot compromise the integrity or thoroughness of an important investigation by our partners at the Gates Police. There are also certain aspects of this case that cannot be shared due to federal privacy laws by schools. These laws are in place to protect children's privacy. We take that very, very seriously as well. I wish other organizations were held to the same standards to protect against the re-victimization of children by publishing certain things. The safety and well-being of our students and staff is paramount. We are always looking at our school security practices and adjusting as needed. This is an ongoing procedure to meet the changing needs of students and staff. We also have an obligation to take care of our students throughout the process. We immediately took steps to provide the support, both academically and socially and emotionally, for the students involved. Lastly, I would urge our community to be cautious about sharing information or speculating about sensitive cases on social media or in any other forum. Please respect the privacy of the students and families involved in this case. And lastly, a reminder for the board, we have our staff flu clinic this Friday, October 1st, from 3 to 6 p.m. And yes, board members and their families are eligible to come do the flu clinic. And again, if you get a chance after this, our senior night for boys soccer is out on the field. If you get a chance to stop out afterwards. Thank you to Transportation for helping us get around to see some of the great construction in our buildings and the great tour that Dr. Ball led. And thanking each of you for your commitment to our district. And with that is my report, sir.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Daly. We do not need an executive session this evening. Motion to adjourn the meeting. Dr. Richards and Ms. Kites, all in favor? The vote is unanimous. We are adjourned.